Hey guys, tonight we journey back several hundred years into the quiet, shadowy streets of a medieval town, a world before electricity, before streetlights glowing on every corner, before the comfort of warm homes filled with bright lamps. Back then, when the sun went down, darkness truly arrived. And in that darkness, someone had to stay awake. Someone had to walk slowly through empty streets while the rest of the town slept. Someone had to listen for the sound of breaking doors, drunken arguments, or the faint and terrifying smell of smoke. Tonight, that someone is you. But before we begin our slow walk through the night, take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe dim the lights around you, settle into your pillow, and let the quiet rhythm of history gently guide you towards sleep. Now imagine the final moments of daylight in a small European town, sometime in the late Middle Ages. The sun sinks slowly behind wooden rooftops and church towers. Warm golden light stretches across narrow cobblestone streets before fading into cool evening shadows. During the day, this town would have been full of noise and activity. Farmers arriving with carts full of vegetables and grain. Merchants shouting prices in the busy marketplace. Blacksmiths hammering glowing iron in smoky workshops. Children running through the streets while dogs bark and chickens scatter out of the way. But as evening approaches, everything begins to slow. Shopkeepers close their wooden shutters. Bakers pull the final loaves from their ovens. Farmers return home after long hours in the fields. Soon candles flicker inside small timber houses, and families gather around simple meals of bread, soup, and cheese. For most people, the coming darkness means rest, but not for you. Your work begins when everyone else's day finally ends. You tighten your thick wool cloak around your shoulders as the air begins to cool. Even in warmer months, medieval nights can become surprisingly cold. Your equipment is simple: a wooden staff, a small lantern with a trembling flame inside, and sometimes a horn or bell used to sound the alarm. That's all you carry. No armor, no sword, no real protection. Just you and the long night ahead. Being a night watchman is not a prestigious job. In fact, most people in town consider it one of the worst duties anyone can have. In many places, watchmen are older men who can no longer perform heavy labor. Others are poor workers assigned the job because no one else wants it. Sometimes the town council forces ordinary citizens to take turns serving on the night watch, and almost everyone dreads their turn because the job is cold, lonely, and often incredibly boring. Still, it must be done. Medieval towns are surprisingly dangerous places once the sun disappears. Without streetlights or patrol cars, the darkness belongs to whoever is brave or foolish enough to move through it. Thieves slip through narrow alleys. Drunken arguments spill out of taverns. Strangers arrive late at night, hoping no one will notice them entering the town. greatest danger of all is something much quieter: fire. Most medieval houses are built almost entirely from wood. Thick timber beams support walls made from wooden planks or wattle and daub. Roofs are often covered with straw or thatch. Inside each home burns an open hearth used for cooking and warmth. One careless candle, one forgotten ember, that is all it takes. If a fire begins in the middle of the night and no one notices quickly enough, flames can leap from house to house with terrifying speed. Entire towns have burned to the ground before sunrise. That is why the night watch exists. Someone must remain awake. Someone must walk the streets while everyone else sleeps. And tonight, that responsibility belongs to you. The last hint of sunlight disappears from the sky as you lift your lantern and begin your patrol. Your boots echo softly against the stone road as you step into the town marketplace. Just hours ago, this place was full of shouting merchants and crowded with buyers. Now it stands empty and silent beneath the fading twilight. Wooden stalls creak gently in the evening breeze. Loose cloth banners flutter quietly overhead. A dog barks somewhere in the distance before falling silent again. The town is settling into sleep. You raise your lantern and glance down a narrow street between crooked houses. Nothing moves, just shadows stretching across uneven walls. In many towns, watchmen must announce the passing hours, so the citizens know someone is awake and guarding them. So after a few minutes of walking, you pause in the middle of the street and take a deep breath. Then you call out loudly into the quiet night. All is well. The night is calm. Your voice echoes softly between the buildings before fading into silence. You will repeat these words many times before morning arrives. All is well. Of course, sometimes it is. You continue walking slowly through the town, past the well where villagers gather during the day, past the bakery where the smell of fresh bread still lingers faintly in the air, past rows of small houses where candles glow dimly behind wooden shutters. Inside those homes, people sleep peacefully, trusting that someone outside is watching over them. But being a watchman often feels strangely lonely. The streets stretch out before you in darkness. The wind brushes softly against your cloak, and hour after hour passes with nothing happening at all. You walk, you listen, you wait. Sometimes you stamp your feet to keep warm. Sometimes you pause to stare up at the stars shining above the rooftops. But you cannot stop for long, because if something does happen, if smoke begins to rise from a chimney, or a thief slips quietly into an alley, you must be the first person to notice. That responsibility rests entirely on your shoulders. Ahead of you stands the town gate. Two guards sit beside a torch mounted on the wall, their shadows flickering across the stone. They nod quietly as you pass. They guard the walls. You guard the streets. Both jobs long, both jobs cold, both jobs filled with endless waiting, turning down a narrow alley. You notice something else about medieval towns at night. The smell, without modern sanitation. The streets often carry the scent of animals, damp straw, and waste thrown outside earlier in the day. It is not pleasant, but after enough nights walking these streets, you barely notice it anymore. You are far more focused on listening. The scrape of footsteps, the creak of a door, the distant clatter of something falling in the dark. Because sometimes the night is not as peaceful as it seems. Most nights, nothing happens, but every once in a while, the quiet breaks. A drunken argument spills into the street. A thief tries his luck in the darkness, or somewhere above the rooftops, a thin line of smoke begins to rise into the cold night air. And if that happens, you will be the first person to see it. For now, though, the town remains quiet. The wind whispers gently through the empty marketplace. The moon slowly climbs higher into the sky, and the long night stretches endlessly ahead. Lantern in hand, you continue your slow patrol through the sleeping town. Step by step, street by street, hour by hour, because morning is still very far away. And unfortunately for you, your shift has only just begun. The night deepens as you continue your slow patrol through the town. The moon has climbed higher into the sky now, casting pale silver light across the rooftops and narrow streets. Your lantern flickers gently in the cool air as you walk, its small circle of light moving across the cobblestones with each step. Most of the town is asleep. Behind wooden shutters and thick stone walls, families rest after long days of work. The baker will wake before sunrise. The farmers will return to the fields. The blacksmith's forge will soon glow again with heat and sparks. But for now, everything is quiet, almost too quiet. Still, the streets are not always completely empty at night. From time to time, you encounter the few people who still wander through the darkness, long after most of the town has gone to sleep. The first group you often see are the drunks. Medieval taverns rarely close early. After a long day of labor, many townspeople enjoy gathering around wooden tables with mugs of ale or wine. Laughter, singing, and loud conversations often continue late into the evening. Eventually, those same cheerful drinkers begin the long and unsteady journey home. You turn a corner and hear the familiar sound of uneven footsteps scraping against stone. A man stumbles into view from a nearby alley. His cloak hangs loosely from his shoulders, and his hat sits crooked on his head. Even from a distance, you can smell the strong scent of ale drifting through the air. He pauses for a moment, squinting at you through the lantern light. Then he gives you a slow nod, as if greeting an old friend. "Evening, Watchman," he mutters. You nod politely, but say nothing. Drunken townsfolk are usually harmless, but they can also be unpredictable. Sometimes they sing loudly as they walk. Sometimes they argue with invisible enemies. Occasionally, they simply sit down in the middle of the street and fall asleep. Your job is not to punish them, but if someone becomes too loud or begins disturbing the peace, you may have to escort them home, or at least guide them away from trouble. Tonight, this particular man simply continues down the street, humming quietly to himself before disappearing into the darkness. You continue your patrol. Further down the road, you encounter another type of nighttime traveler, the late worker. Not everyone in a medieval town has the luxury of resting early. Bakers often rise in the middle of the night to prepare bread before dawn. Millers sometimes work by moonlight when the wind is right. And fishermen in coastal towns often prepare their boats long before sunrise. As you pass the small bakery near the edge of the marketplace, you notice a faint glow inside. Through the small window, you can see the baker already awake, kneading dough beside a warm oven. He glances up briefly and waves. You raise your lantern in greeting before continuing on your way. Moments like these remind you that even in the deepest hours of night, life in the town never fully stops. But there are also other figures who move through the darkness, people who prefer not to be seen. You pause for a moment near a narrow alley and listen carefully. Footsteps, quick and quiet. Someone moves at the far end of the alley before disappearing behind a stack of barrels. Perhaps it is just a resident returning home late, or perhaps it is something else. Thieves often prefer the cover of darkness. Most houses have simple wooden doors and shutters. A skilled thief with the right tools can slip inside quietly and disappear again before anyone notices. That is one reason your patrol is so important. Even the sight of a watchman walking nearby can be enough to discourage someone from attempting a burglary. You step slowly into the alley, lifting your lantern higher. The small flame casts dancing shadows along the walls. Nothing. The alley is empty. Perhaps whoever was there heard your footsteps and decided to leave. That happens often. Most thieves are not eager to confront a watchman face to face. You turn and return to the main street. The wind has grown slightly stronger now, rustling loose straw along the roadside. Above you, clouds drift slowly across the moon. The hours pass quietly. Every so often, you stop and announce the passing of time. All is well. The night is calm. Your voice travels softly across the empty streets. Somewhere in the distance, another watchman answers with the same call. In larger towns, several watchmen patrol different areas throughout the night, each responsible for a specific district. Their voices echo faintly through the darkness, reassuring the sleeping town that someone remains awake. You continue your walk toward the church at the center of town. Its tall stone tower rises above the rooftops like a silent guardian. During the day, the church bells ring to mark important hours and gatherings. At night, however, the tower stands quiet and still, Your lantern light brushes across the wooden door as you pass. For a moment, you pause and listen. Nothing but the wind and the distant hoot of an owl somewhere beyond the town walls. Owls are common companions during the long hours of night patrol. Their quiet wings glide across the sky as they hunt for mice among the fields and rooftops. Sometimes the sudden flutter of their wings can startle an unsuspecting watchman. But tonight, the owl's call is gentle and distant. You resume walking. Further along the street, you pass the town well once again. This time, something catches your eye. A figure sits quietly beside the well, wrapped in a dark cloak. You slow your steps. The person appears to be an old woman, hunched slightly forward with her hands resting on a wooden bucket. As you approach, she looks up slowly. Her eyes reflect the lantern light. "Couldn't sleep," she says softly. You nod. It happens sometimes. The elderly often wake during the night, unable to return to sleep. She smiles faintly before standing and lifting the bucket. "Thank you for keeping watch," she says. Then she walks slowly back toward her home. Moments like this are rare. Most of the time, people barely notice the watchman at all. Your work happens quietly in the background of their lives. Unseen, uncelebrated, but still necessary. You continue your patrol once more. The streets stretch ahead of you, silent and empty beneath the moonlight. Your lantern flickers softly. The wind whispers through narrow alleys. And somewhere far away, a dog begins barking again. Most of the time, the night is calm, but every once in a while, someone walking these streets after dark has far less innocent reasons for being there. And when that happens, the quiet night can quickly turn into something much more dangerous. The night continues as you walk slowly through the quiet streets. Your lantern sways gently in your hand, casting small circles of warm light onto the cobblestones below. The moon has drifted behind a thin layer of clouds now, making the town feel darker than before. This is the kind of darkness that medieval towns knew very well. Without streetlights or lanterns on every corner, most streets become shadowy and uncertain after midnight. A person can disappear into an alley with only a few quick steps, and that is exactly why crime often happens at night. During the day, towns are full of eyes. Merchants stand in their shops. Farmers walk through the streets. Children run between houses. Everyone notices everything. But at night, most of those eyes are closed, which means the few people who remain awake must pay closer attention. People like you continue walking along the edge of the marketplace. Earlier in the evening, a few drunks wandered home from the taverns, but now even those voices have faded. The town is quieter than before, but quiet does not always mean safe. Medieval towns are not filled with large organized gangs, the way some cities might be today. Instead, most crimes are smaller and more personal. A stolen purse, a broken door, a missing chicken, a merchant's goods quietly disappearing from a storage room. For many thieves, night provides the perfect opportunity. You pause near a row of houses and listen carefully. At first, there is nothing, just the soft wind moving between buildings. Then, a faint scraping sound. You turn your lantern toward the noise. It seems to be coming from behind a wooden shed near the back of a small house. Slowly, you walk closer. The light of your lantern stretches across the wall, revealing the shadow of a person crouched near a window. The figure freezes. For a moment, neither of you moves. Then the shadow suddenly jumps to its feet. Footsteps slap quickly against the ground as the person darts into a nearby alley. You take a few quick steps forward, raising your lantern. But by the time you reach the corner, the alley is already empty. This happens more often than you might think. Most thieves in medieval towns do not want confrontation. They rely on silence and speed, slipping away the moment someone notices them. Your presence alone may have prevented a burglary tonight. Still, catching someone in the act is rarely easy. Without bright lights or large patrols, a single watchman can only cover so much ground. You return to the street and continue walking. The clouds shift slightly above, allowing the moon to shine through once again. The rooftops glow faintly in the pale silver light. Some crimes, however, are not so quiet. Sometimes trouble announces itself loudly. As you turn another corner, voices suddenly echo through the night. Angry voices. Two men stand in the middle of the road near the tavern door, arguing loudly. One of them waves his arms while the other leans forward, shouting back. The smell of ale fills the air. This kind of situation is not unusual. Alcohol often turns simple disagreements into heated confrontations. You approach slowly, keeping your lantern raised. The two men glance at you. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The sight of a watchman tends to cool tempers surprisingly quickly. Neither man wants to spend the night explaining his behavior to the town authorities. After a few more muttered words, one of them turns and walks away down the street. The other shakes his head before disappearing into the tavern again. The street grows quiet once more. You continue walking. Further along the road, you pass a small stable where horses sleep behind wooden doors. One of them shifts quietly inside, its hooves tapping softly against the floor. Animals often notice things before humans do. Sometimes a restless horse or barking dog can warn you that someone is nearby. Tonight, however, the stable grows still again after a few moments. You move on. Most crimes in medieval towns are not dramatic events. There are no elaborate heists or carefully planned robberies. Instead, trouble usually comes in simple forms. A hungry person stealing food, a traveler taking advantage of an unlocked door, a desperate worker attempting to take something that does not belong to him. Life in the Middle Ages can be difficult. Food shortages, harsh winters, and long hours of labor push some people toward choices they might otherwise avoid. That does not make the crimes acceptable, of course, but it explains why they happen. As a watchman, your role is not only to stop crime, but also to discourage it. The steady glow of your lantern moving through the streets reminds everyone that someone is watching. Even the most determined thief prefers darkness without witnesses. You stop again and call out into the night. All is well. The night is calm. Your voice travels softly across the rooftops. Somewhere far away, another watchman answers with the same words. For a moment, the town feels almost peaceful, but not all crimes happen within the town walls. Sometimes danger arrives from outside. Travelers occasionally reach the gates late at night, hopping to enter before morning. Most of them are harmless merchants or messengers, but sometimes strangers bring trouble with them. Smugglers, bandits, or people fleeing from crimes committed in other towns. That is why the town gates remain guarded, even at night, and why watchmen like you continue walking the streets until sunrise. Because even when everything appears quiet, the possibility of trouble never truly disappears. You continue your patrol once more, lanterns swaying gently with each step. The town sleeps peacefully around you, but somewhere in the darkness, someone might still be watching, waiting for the right moment to move unseen. And if they do, you will be the first person standing in their way. The night moves slowly forward as you continue your quiet patrol. Your lantern glows softly in the darkness, its small flame dancing whenever a cool breeze drifts through the narrow streets. The town remains mostly silent, with only the occasional creak of wood or distant bark of a dog breaking the stillness. But even on the calmest nights, one danger always sits quietly in the back of your mind. Fire. For a medieval night watchman, nothing is more terrifying. You walk past rows of houses built from thick wooden beams and walls packed with mud and straw. Most roofs above you are made from dry thatch, tightly layered bundles of straw that can catch fire with frightening speed. During the day, these homes feel warm and safe, but at night, they are dangerously vulnerable. Inside, nearly every house burns an open hearth used for cooking and heat. Candles flicker beside beds and tables. Oil lamps glow dimly in dark corners. Each flame is small, but if one falls over, or if a spark escapes from the hearth, disaster can begin quietly in the middle of the night. You have heard the stories. Entire towns destroyed before sunrise. Flames leaping from roof to roof as people rush outside half awake, carrying whatever belongings they can grab. Children crying, church bells ringing wildly, buckets of water passed desperately from hand to hand. Fire spreads quickly in places like this. Wood dries over time, becoming easy fuel for even the smallest spark. Straw roofs burn like torches once they catch flame, and without organized fire brigades or modern equipment, Controlling a fire depends almost entirely on speed and cooperation. That is where the night watchman becomes so important. You are the first line of defense. If a fire begins while everyone sleeps, you must be the one to notice it first. As you walk along the street, your eyes move constantly from rooftop to rooftop. Chimneys release thin lines of smoke that drift slowly into the cool night air. Most of the time, this is perfectly normal, but a watchman learns to recognize the difference between the gentle smoke of a dying hearth and the darker, thicker smoke of a growing fire. You pause near a small cluster of homes and look upward. For a moment, the wind shifts. Your heart beats slightly faster. You think you smell something. Smoke. You stand still and breathe in carefully. But after a moment, you realize the scent is faint and distant. Perhaps someone simply added a final piece of wood to their hearth before going to sleep. Still, moments like this remind you how quickly things could change. You continue walking, your lantern casting long shadows along the walls. In many towns, watchmen are trained to act immediately if they spot flames or heavy smoke. The first step is to raise the alarm. Sometimes this means ringing a bell carried by the watchman. Other times, it means shouting loudly through the streets or blowing a horn to wake the town. Once the alarm sounds, everyone must respond. Neighbors rush outside carrying buckets of water from wells or nearby rivers. Others climb onto rooftops, pulling away burning thatch before the fire spreads further. Meanwhile, watchmen help guide people, shouting directions and warning those still asleep. But even with quick action, fires often cause terrible damage. You pass a small empty lot where a house once stood many years ago. The ground is still slightly uneven, where the old foundation remains buried beneath dirt and weeds. According to the older residents of the town, a fire destroyed that house long ago during a cold winter night. The flames spread quickly through several nearby homes before the town managed to stop them. Stories like that stay with a watchman. They remind you that the quiet streets you patrol could change in an instant. You continue your patrol toward the edge of town, where the wind moves more freely across open fields. Your lantern flickers as the breeze grows stronger. Up ahead, a thin trail of smoke rises from a chimney, drifting sideways into the night sky. You slow your steps and watch it carefully. The smoke moves steadily and lightly. Normal. Still, you make a mental note of the house before continuing your walk. A good watchman never ignores small details. The hours continue, passing quietly. Occasionally, you stop and call out the familiar words. All is well. The night is calm. Your voice echoes softly through the empty streets. Somewhere in the distance, another watchman repeats the same call. For a few peaceful moments, everything feels safe. But the truth is, fire rarely announces itself politely. Sometimes it begins silently behind a wall. Sometimes it grows slowly beneath a roof while everyone sleeps below. By the time someone notices, the flames may already be spreading. That is why your eyes constantly search the darkness. Your nose listens for the scent of smoke. Your ears wait for the crackle of burning wood. Because if a fire begins tonight, you will likely be the first person to see it. And when that moment comes, the peaceful silence of the town will vanish instantly. The calm streets will fill with shouting voices and rushing footsteps. Church bells will ring wildly in the darkness, and the quiet patrol of a lonely watchman will suddenly become a desperate race against spreading flames. For now, though, the town remains safe. The wind settles. The chimneys breathe gently into the night air, and you continue your slow patrol beneath the moonlight, hoping that tonight will remain quiet. Because if fire ever truly takes hold, a single watchman may be the only warning the town receives before everything changes. The night stretches on as you continue walking through the quiet streets. But tonight, the air feels different. Colder, much colder. Winter has arrived in the town. And for a night watchman, winter is the most difficult season of all. During the day, the cold can be uncomfortable. But once the sun disappears and darkness settles across the land, the temperature drops quickly. Your breath forms pale clouds in front of your face as you walk. The wind moves slowly through the narrow streets, slipping between buildings and tugging at your cloak. You pull the thick wool fabric tighter around your shoulders, but it only helps a little. Medieval clothing is warm compared to nothing, but it is far from perfect. Layers of wool, linen, and leather can trap some heat, yet the cold eventually finds its way inside, especially when you must stay outside for the entire night. Snow crunches softly beneath your boots as you step through the empty marketplace. During the day, the snow here would be trampled by carts, animals, and busy townspeople. But now, a thin layer has settled quietly across the ground, untouched except for your own footprints. Your lantern casts a warm glow against the white surface, creating long shadows that stretch behind you. The town feels even quieter in winter. Most people prefer to stay inside their homes, where small fires burn in the hearth. Windows are closed tightly to keep the cold air out. Only the watchman and a few guards remain outside. You stamp your feet lightly to keep the blood moving in your toes. One of the hardest parts of winter patrol is staying warm enough to remain alert. Cold fingers struggle to hold a lantern steady. Cold ears struggle to notice distant sounds. And cold minds can become slow and tired. Some watchmen carry small flasks of strong drink to help warm themselves during long shifts. Others rely on constant movement, walking from street to street to prevent their bodies from stiffening. Stopping for too long can be dangerous. Your body cools quickly when you stand still in winter air. You turn down a narrow street where tall houses block much of the wind. For a moment, the air feels slightly calmer. Thin trails of smoke rise from chimneys above you, drifting slowly upward into the dark sky. Those chimneys mean warmth. Inside those homes, families sleep beside glowing hearths. Blankets and thick clothing keep them comfortable, while the cold presses against the walls outside. You continue walking past a row of wooden doors, each one closed tightly against the winter night. Some homes have small shutters covering their windows. Others allow faint candlelight to shine through thin cracks in the wood. Occasionally, you hear quiet sounds from inside. A baby crying, a chair scraping softly across a floor, the muffled cough of someone waking briefly before returning to sleep. Life continues inside those warm rooms while you walk through the frozen streets. The wind picks up again as you reach the edge of town. Here the buildings stand farther apart, allowing the cold air to move more freely across open ground. Snow drifts slowly across the road in small, swirling patterns. You pull your hood lower over your head. Winter nights like this can feel endless. The hours pass slowly when the cold settles deep into your bones. You stop for a moment beside the town well and lift your lantern slightly. The surface of the water has frozen into a thin sheet of ice. During extremely harsh winters, even the wells can freeze completely, forcing townspeople to break the ice each morning before drawing water. You tap the frozen surface lightly with your staff before continuing your patrol. Further along the road, you notice something unusual. Footprints, fresh ones. They cross the snowy street and disappear between two houses. You pause for a moment, studying them. The prints look recent, perhaps made only minutes ago. Someone has walked here not long before you arrived. That is not necessarily suspicious. People sometimes step outside during the night for many harmless reasons. Still, you follow the prints for a short distance. They lead to a small wooden door. A moment later, the door creaks open slightly, and a man steps outside holding a bucket. He looks surprised to see you. "Evening, Watchman," he says quietly. You nod in return. "Just fetching water before the well freezes completely," he explains. You glance at the bucket, and then back at the frozen well behind you. That makes sense. Winter forces people to adjust their daily routines in small ways. The man fills his bucket quickly before returning inside, closing the door firmly behind him. You continue walking. The moon emerges briefly from behind thick clouds, casting pale light across the snow-covered rooftops. For a moment, the town looks peaceful and almost beautiful. White roofs glow softly beneath the moonlight. Your lantern flickers in the cold air, and the entire world feels still. But winter nights are not only uncomfortable for watchmen, they can also be dangerous. Cold weather makes fires even more likely. People burn larger fires in their hearths to stay warm, increasing the risk that sparks might escape. Snow and ice also make streets slippery. A fall in the wrong place could leave a watchman injured and unable to continue his patrol. And of course, long hours in freezing air slowly drain your energy. Still, the patrol must continue. You stop once more and call out into the silent streets. All is well. The night is calm. Your voice sounds softer in the thick winter air. The words drift gently across the snow-covered town. Somewhere in the distance, another watchman answers the call. The sound reminds you that you are not entirely alone tonight. Even so, the cold makes the night feel longer than usual. Your lantern sways gently as you walk. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The wind whispers through empty streets. And somewhere above the rooftops, the clouds slowly cover the moon once again. There are still many hours left before sunrise. And on a freezing winter night like this, those hours can feel endless. The night has grown deeper, colder, and quieter as you continue your patrol. The snow from earlier drifts gently across the cobblestones, and your lantern sways with each step, casting soft golden light on the narrow streets. Most of the town is asleep. Homes are dark except for a few flickering candle flames. Inside, families huddle near hearths, unaware of the watchman moving silently outside. But even the quietest nights are not without disturbances. A sudden shout echoes from the far end of the street. You freeze, your lantern held high. The voice is loud, angry, and unmistakable. Someone is in trouble. Drunks. The taverns are closed now, but the effects of the evening's ale often linger. Groups of men stagger through the streets, laughing too loudly, shouting insults, and sometimes getting into arguments over minor slights. You approach slowly, keeping your lantern steady. Two men are now in the middle of the street, facing each other with red faces and clenched fists. One trips slightly, almost falling, and the other takes advantage of the stumble to shove him. Fights like these are not uncommon. Alcohol and darkness create a dangerous combination. Arguments that would never happen in the daylight escalate quickly at night. Your presence usually prevents serious injury. You step forward, raising your lantern so the small circle of light falls directly on them. Both men freeze immediately, caught by your watchful eyes. A silent understanding passes between you and them. They do not want trouble with the night watchman. After a few tense seconds, one man mutters a curse under his breath and staggers off toward his home, while the other shuffles in the opposite direction, muttering apologies to himself. The street grows quiet again. You continue your patrol, your breath forming pale clouds in the cold night air. Occasionally, you hear the shuffle of someone returning home from a late errand, or the distant clatter of a barrel knocked over by a careless passerby. Sometimes it is just the wind. Sometimes it is something more. The town's nightlife is strange and unpredictable. In addition to drunks, you occasionally encounter wandering workers finishing urgent tasks, travelers passing through, and the occasional thief slipping quietly between shadows. Each encounter requires patience and careful observation. Your role is not to punish everyone. Mostly, you are there to prevent small incidents from becoming larger problems. Further along, near a row of houses, you hear shouting again. A group of 3 men has cornered another, demanding coins or valuables. The victim is unarmed and visibly frightened. You move closer, keeping your lantern slightly raised so the light catches the group's faces. All is well, you call softly, your voice carrying authority even in the night. The men stop mid-action, startled. One glances toward the alley behind them, as if weighing the risks of confrontation. After a moment, they mutter curses and disperse into the darkness, leaving the frightened man to scurry away toward the safety of his home. Your heart beats faster now. This is the kind of situation a watchman fears most: violence that could quickly escalate if not interrupted. The rest of the night is filled with smaller disturbances. A dog barks persistently near the market square, chasing the scent of something unseen. A cartwheel breaks on uneven cobblestones, sending a loud crash echoing through the streets. A drunk man stumbles into a wooden post, cursing and rubbing his forehead. Each time you approach quietly, checking for danger and restoring calm. Hours pass slowly. The darkness seems endless. You call out once more as you pass the church tower. All is well. The night is calm. Your words echo softly across the empty streets, fading into the distance. Despite the small moments of chaos, the town remains largely intact. No fires have broken out. No serious fights have escalated. No thieves have escaped with anything significant. Still, your vigilance cannot waver, because just one mistake, one distraction, or one misstep could mean disaster. And on nights like this, when drunks roam, arguments flare, and shadows move suspiciously across the walls, you know exactly why being a night watchman is often called the worst job in the medieval town. The streets grow quieter again, but you continue walking, lantern in hand, muscles tense, eyes scanning every shadow, because even when everything seems calm, danger is never far away, and the night still has many hours to go. The night wears on, stretching its long fingers across the silent town. Your boots echo softly against the cold cobblestones, and the lantern in your hand casts a small, flickering circle of light, the only brightness in the deep darkness. Even the bravest watchman cannot ignore the strange stories that circulate through towns about the hours after midnight. Superstitions cling tightly to those who spend their lives walking empty streets while everyone else sleeps. Some nights, the wind carries whispers that are almost human. A shadow shifts in a doorway. A floorboard creaks where no one should be walking. And suddenly, the hair on the back of your neck stands on end. Every town has its tales. Stories of spirits that wander the streets at night. Restless souls unable to find peace. Some believe these spirits are former watchmen who died in the line of duty. Others say they are thieves caught in the act and hanged, their souls cursed to haunt the alleys forever. You pass an old house near the edge of town. The shutters are closed, but something about the way the moonlight falls makes the windows seem like dark, watchful eyes. For a moment, you swear you see movement inside. But when your lantern swings closer, it is only a curtain fluttering in the breeze. Still, the mind plays tricks when you walk alone at night. Some watchmen carry charms or small tokens for protection. A piece of iron, a small cross, or a whispered prayer is believed to ward off evil spirits. Others avoid speaking a woman's name after midnight, fearing that it might call something unseen into their path. You recall the stories told by older watchmen when you first began this work. One man swore that the sound of footsteps following him was never another human, but a shadow spirit trying to test his courage. Another claimed that bells rang by themselves, warning of danger he could not yet see. At first, you dismissed such tales. But after countless nights patrolling silent streets, hearing noises no one else notices, seeing shadows stretch and bend in impossible ways, you start to understand why the superstitions persist. Your lantern sways as you walk down a narrow alley. The wind whistles softly through the gap between two houses. Every creak and groan of timber seems louder than usual, every distant rustle sharper. For a brief moment, you stop and breathe. You glance up at the dark sky. Stars twinkle faintly above, cold and distant, and the moon drifts behind a thin cloud. Even in these quiet moments, your senses remain alert. Every noise is meaningful. Every shadow could hide a threat or something far stranger. You continue walking, past the bakery that has long since closed, past the small well near the center of town, and past the gate where a single guard keeps vigil beside a dim torch. The town seems asleep, yet the night carries a subtle tension. A chill crawls into your bones, and the quiet is heavy. It is the kind of silence that makes you notice things you would otherwise ignore. The distant howl of a dog, the flap of a loose roof tile, the faint clink of something metal far away, and somewhere, just out of sight, there is always the possibility of the unknown. Most townspeople never consider it. They sleep safely in their beds, trusting that someone watches over them. But for you, the night is alive. Alive with stories, alive with possibilities, and alive with the remnants of old fears passed down through generations. You step lightly past a crooked fence. An owl hoots in the distance. Somewhere in the shadows, a cat moves silently. You catch a glimpse of movement, but by the time you focus, it is gone. Perhaps a rat, perhaps something less explainable. These are the nights that test a watchman's courage. Not because of the drunks or the occasional thief, not because of fire or broken carts, but because of the uncertainty that fills every dark corner. The older men in town warned you. The night can play tricks on the mind. It can make shadows seem alive. It can make whispers sound like voices. It can make the quiet unbearable and stretch each hour into eternity. Yet, despite these fears, you continue your patrol, step by step, street by street, lantern in hand, eyes scanning every shadow, ears tuned to every distant sound. Because even in the darkest night, even with the superstitions that cling to every alley and empty street, the town relies on you, and someone has to be brave enough to face both the darkness and the stories that live within it. The night is long, and the hours are only halfway gone. Somewhere ahead, more disturbances await. Perhaps a drunken argument, a thief in the shadows, or the faintest hint of smoke curling from a chimney. And it is your job to notice, to act, to keep the town safe while the rest of its people sleep, oblivious to the quiet dangers around them. For now, you continue walking. The wind whispers, the lantern flickers, shadows shift, and the night carries on, mysterious, silent, and endless. The town remains cloaked in darkness as you continue your patrol. Your lantern swings gently with each step, the small flame creating dancing shadows along the walls of the narrow streets. Even the bravest watchman becomes hyper-aware at this hour. Every sound takes on significance. Every creak, groan, or distant clatter could mean something or nothing at all. From somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. The sound echoes down the alleys, fading into the night. A stray cat scurries across the rooftops, its soft padding barely audible above the crunch of your boots. But then something else, a faint scraping noise. It comes from a side alley, far enough away that it could be almost anything. A barrel tipping over, loose timber swaying in the wind, or someone moving quietly where they should not be. You stop and hold your lantern steady. Your eyes search the shadows, and your ears strain to hear more. The scraping repeats, slightly louder, then stops. A branch snaps somewhere above. A gust of wind shifts the straw on a roof. The town seems alive with small, mysterious sounds. Medieval streets at night are full of these noises. Without modern lights or the hum of daily life, sounds travel farther, echoing strangely. A rat in the alley can sound like a person. A falling crate can sound like a thief escaping. And even the wind can whisper through gaps in the buildings like a secret warning. You take a cautious step into the alley, lifting your lantern. The light swings across the walls, revealing nothing but stacked barrels and crates. The sound has stopped. Perhaps it was just the wind or the shadows playing tricks on your mind. Still, a watchman cannot ignore anything. Step by step, you move along the narrow streets. The sound of your boots is loud in the quiet night. Occasionally, you pause to listen. The town seems asleep, yet every corner holds potential mystery. A distant clang from the blacksmith's workshop startles you. Even though the forge is long closed, metal can contract in the cold, creating sharp, unexpected sounds. Nearby, an empty cart rocks slightly in the wind. Loose tools inside rattle against each other. Your lantern catches the glint of metal, and for a moment, you imagine a thief rummaging through the supplies. But no one is there. Sometimes, these strange sounds are reminders of how vulnerable the town really is. A careless spark, a loose window, a distracted guard, any of these small things could become serious if ignored. You continue past the town well, glancing into its dark, still waters. The reflection of the lantern flame ripples faintly across the surface, twisting the shadows around it. The gentle lapping of water against the stone edges adds another layer of quiet sound to the night. From time to time, you hear the distant hum of the wind moving through chimneys. A piece of loose thatch flutters in the breeze. Sometimes, the noises are nothing more than normal sounds amplified by the emptiness of the streets. But in these long hours, even normal sounds feel strange. You lift your lantern to a higher angle, scanning the rooftops. A shadow shifts along the side of a house. Your mind races. Could it be a person? Or just a stray animal? Perhaps a branch caught by the wind. Your heart beats a little faster. The night teaches you patience, alertness, and a certain wariness of everything you cannot immediately explain. A few steps later, you hear footsteps, quick, light, and deliberate. You freeze, listening. They come from behind, echoing against the stone walls of the alley. You slowly turn, holding your lantern steady. The footsteps stop. Silence. After a tense moment, a lone figure emerges from the shadows. A young boy, perhaps delivering something for his family or returning home from an errand. He freezes when he sees you, gives a quick nod, and continues on his way, disappearing down another street. You exhale slowly. These are the kinds of moments that define a night watchman's hours. The long stretches of quiet, punctuated by sudden, unexplained noises. Some are harmless. Others could indicate danger. Step by step, you keep walking. The town remains cloaked in darkness. Every corner holds potential mystery. Every alley seems alive with small, strange sounds. And even when nothing happens, the night itself feels like a living presence, watching, whispering, waiting. You pause again, raising your lantern, and call softly into the empty streets. All is well. The night is calm. The words echo faintly, swallowed slowly by the darkness. For now, the strange sounds have subsided, but the night is far from over, and the streets still hold secrets that may reveal themselves before dawn. The night has deepened further, and the chill has grown sharper. Your lantern sways gently in your hand as you approach the edge of town, where the gates stand like silent sentinels against the dark. For a medieval town, the gates are among the most important structures. By day, they control the flow of merchants, travelers, and goods. By night, they are the first line of defense against intruders, thieves, or wandering troublemakers. As a night watchman, guarding the streets is one part of your duty, but the gates require their own careful attention. A single unlocked gate could allow anyone to slip in unnoticed. And in a town built largely of timber, one careless visitor could be disastrous. The wooden doors loom high and heavy, reinforced with iron bands. You check them carefully. Every hinge, every lock, every bolt must be secure. A gate left ajar is not only a sign of negligence, it is an invitation to danger. Beside the gate stands another guard, a man older than you, bundled in thick layers to ward off the cold. He leans on his staff, eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. Occasionally, he shifts a hand to tap the small bell at his side, signaling the passing of time. You exchange a quiet nod. Communication is minimal but vital. Each of you relies on the other to notice the small things, a strange sound, a figure moving oddly, or the subtle shift of a shadow. Tonight, the streets are quiet, too quiet. You can hear the soft whisper of the wind through the gate's wooden slats, and the occasional creak of the timbers as the cold contracts them. A few stars peek out from behind drifting clouds, casting dim light over the town walls. In the darkness, every movement is amplified. A stray animal rustling through a cart full of hay sounds like a thief. A falling branch snaps like a weapon striking stone. And footsteps, human footsteps, can be almost impossible to locate precisely. As you patrol the perimeter near the gate, you notice faint tracks in the dirt outside. Someone has passed here recently, leaving prints that are already beginning to freeze in the cold night air. You approach cautiously. The prints lead to a small gate post, then stop abruptly. Whoever passed this way either went around the town walls or disappeared into the darkness. A faint thrill of unease runs through you. Nighttime is unpredictable, and the edge of town is always where the unknown feels closest. From the gate tower, the older guard gestures toward a distant light flickering beyond the fields. Perhaps it is a lone traveler approaching. Perhaps something else. You lift your lantern higher, squinting through the darkness. The wind carries the faint smell of smoke, or perhaps it is just the warmth of someone's hearth drifting from another part of town. Still, every sense is alert. You must be ready. The gate is more than a physical barrier. It is a symbol, a reminder that even when most of the town sleeps, someone is awake, vigilant, and ready to respond. You listen carefully, focusing on the faintest sounds. Occasionally, the distant bark of a dog or the movement of a rat across the snow draws your attention. Every sound is a clue. Every shadow could hide something or someone. Hours pass slowly. You walk the perimeter, then return to the main gate. Each time you check the locks, the hinges, the walls. You raise your lantern, scanning every corner. Even in calm nights, the gates demand vigilance. A careless moment could allow a thief, a wanderer, or worse, to enter the town unnoticed. And in a town where fires spread easily and valuables are vulnerable. Any intruder could be catastrophic. You call out softly, your voice echoing through the empty streets. All is well. The night is calm. The older guard responds quietly from the tower. The exchange is brief, almost ritualistic, but it is enough. Step by step, hour by hour, the night continues, and at the town gates, as elsewhere, your watch is unending, because in a medieval town, safety depends on those willing to remain awake while the world sleeps. The gates remain silent, yet their importance weighs heavily on you. Every shadow, every sound, every subtle shift in the darkness demands attention. For the rest of the town, the night is peaceful. For you, the night is a long, unbroken line of responsibility, stretching endlessly into the darkness. The night has grown long, and the hours weigh heavily on your shoulders. Your boots crunch softly against the frozen cobblestones, and the lantern's flickering light barely pierces the darkness that wraps the town like a thick blanket. Most nights are quiet. Some nights are filled with small disturbances, a drunk, a thief, or a stray animal. But occasionally, the night brings something entirely unexpected. As you round a corner near the town square, you notice a figure standing in the shadows. At first, you think it might be one of the usual late-night wanderers, but something about the posture seems off. The figure stands unnaturally still, almost blending with the darkness of the alleyway. You pause. Your lantern's light sweeps across the figure, and for a brief moment, you see the glint of eyes reflecting in the glow. Who goes there? You call, trying to keep your voice calm but firm. The figure does not move immediately. Then, slowly, a hooded cloak steps forward. A young woman emerges from the shadows, carrying a basket. She starts to speak, her voice soft but urgent. I need help. My brother has fallen in the river outside town. Your heart quickens. Accidents like these are not uncommon. The river runs close to town, and in winter, its icy edges are treacherous. People often venture out too late, risking frostbite or drowning. You lower your lantern slightly and motion for her to follow you. Lead the way, you say. The walk is tense. Every shadow seems larger, every noise sharper. The cold bites at your fingers, but your pace does not falter. You know that even a few minutes can make the difference between life and death. Finally, you reach the riverbank. The moonlight glistens on the frozen water, but near the edge, the ice is thin and dangerous. There, partially submerged, is a man struggling to keep afloat, his hands grasping desperately for something solid. Without hesitation, you move closer, using a nearby branch to reach him. He grabs it, shivering violently. With careful effort, you pull him from the freezing water, and the young woman helps guide him to safer ground. You check him quickly. Thankfully, he is alive, though shivering and pale. The cold is relentless, and you know hypothermia can set in fast. You wrap him in your cloak and signal for others in town to bring blankets and warm water. Moments like these remind you why the night watchman's role extends far beyond preventing crime. You are a guardian, a rescuer, a silent protector, while the town sleeps unaware of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. After ensuring the man is safe, you escort the young woman back to her home. She thanks you quietly, her words barely audible in the crisp night air. You nod, understanding that gratitude in these hours is rare and fleeting. You continue your patrol, lanterns swinging in rhythm with your steps. The streets are quieter now, almost eerily so, as if the town itself is holding its breath, yet the night is far from over. Unexpected dangers, accidents, and disturbances can arise at any moment. You remind yourself that vigilance is not optional. Every shadow, every sound, every flicker of light demands attention. The hours stretch on endlessly. Your body aches from walking. The cold seeps into your bones, and your eyes strain to catch every subtle movement. But for the town, your presence ensures that night remains survivable, that dangers are mitigated, and that small emergencies do not become tragedies. As you pause to call out your familiar words into the darkness, the echo carries far across the empty streets. All is well, the night is calm. For now it is true, but you know that in the hours to come, the night will continue to test your patience, your courage, and your endurance. And you will continue walking, lantern in hand, keeping watch while the town sleeps peacefully, because this is the life of a medieval night watchman, unseen, uncelebrated, and endlessly necessary. The night drags on, and the chill has become almost unbearable. Your boots echo faintly against the frozen cobblestones, and the lantern in your hand swings with each step, casting weak, trembling light across the narrow streets. These are the hours that test even the most seasoned watchman, the hours when exhaustion sets in, and every shadow seems heavier, every distant sound sharper. Most townspeople sleep, oblivious to the long vigil you keep. Inside their warm homes, fires crackle in hearths, and families huddle together under thick blankets. Outside, the cold presses relentlessly against your cloak, seeping into every layer of clothing. You move slowly past familiar streets, scanning each alley, each doorway, and each rooftop. The snow glistens faintly in the lantern's light, masking small details, making every step feel uncertain. This is the part of the night when imagination runs wild. A loose shutter banging against a wall sounds like someone trying to break in. A distant hoot from an owl echoes like a human scream. Even the soft whistle of the wind through the chimneys carries a sense of menace. Hours like these stretch endlessly. Your body aches, your fingers are numb, and your eyelids feel heavy. Yet stopping is not an option. Every moment, every step could make the difference between safety and disaster. You pause at the market square, your lantern casting long shadows across empty stalls. The town clock is silent, its hands frozen in the darkness. You lift your voice softly, as you always do. All is well, the night is calm. The echo returns faintly from distant walls. For a brief moment, you allow yourself a glance at the horizon. The first pale hints of dawn are beginning to push against the darkness, though the sun itself has not yet appeared. Even the smallest change in light feels monumental after hours of near total darkness. It signals the end of the night's longest and coldest hours. But until the sun rises fully, your watch continues. Step by step, you move along the streets, checking the town gates, scanning alleys, and ensuring that the few remaining disturbances, the occasional drunk, the wandering traveler, or the shadow of a thief, are contained. Each hour blends into the next. The cold and fatigue are relentless, but you keep moving. Lantern in hand, eyes alert, every sense tuned to the night around you. The town may appear calm, but even in these early hours before sunrise, dangers persist. Fires can start, arguments can flare, and mischief or accidents can occur without warning. You remind yourself why your role is so vital. The night may be long, but it is also fragile. Every quiet hour you preserve keeps the town intact and its people safe. The wind shifts, and you wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The first faint bird calls signal that dawn is approaching, but the cold air reminds you that hours remain before light will fully chase away the darkness. As you continue walking, lantern casting flickering shadows on frost-covered walls, you reflect on the job. Long, cold, exhausting, and often thankless. And yet, in these moments, there is a strange sense of purpose. Because while the town sleeps, you are awake. Because while the world rests, you are vigilant. Because while the darkness stretches endlessly, you remain a barrier between safety and chaos. Step by step, hour by hour, the longest part of the night passes, and somewhere ahead, the first true light of dawn is beginning to reach the rooftops. But until it arrives fully, your watch is far from over. The night has been long, the night has been cold, and the night will demand more before it finally ends. The night stretches on, colder and quieter than ever. Lanterns swinging gently, you move toward the outskirts of town, where the houses thin out and the open fields stretch toward the horizon. Beyond the town walls, the world is wilder. Here, darkness is absolute, and every sound carries differently across the frozen ground. The wind whistles through the gaps between fences, and the branches of bare trees scrape against each other like whispering fingers. And in these hours, another threat lurks: wolves. Wolves were a constant concern for medieval towns, especially in the winter. Packs roamed the forests and fields surrounding settlements, sometimes venturing dangerously close to the outskirts. Livestock were easy prey, and on rare occasions, wandering travelers or careless townspeople could become targets. You pause near a distant barn, lantern held high, listening. The faint crunch of snow in the distance makes your heart beat faster. Could it be an animal? Or perhaps a pack testing the edges of the town? Your staff rests ready at your side, and your cloak flaps around you in the cold wind. You know that vigilance is as much about preparation as courage. One misstep, one lapse in attention, and an animal could slip through unnoticed. The wind carries faint sounds from the fields, rustling, snapping twigs, something moving across the snow. You strain your ears, listening. Wolves rarely make a sound until they are very close, and even a single howl can travel a long distance, making it difficult to pinpoint. Your eyes sweep across the darkened fields, lantern light reaching only a few feet in any direction. Shadows twist and move strangely in the flickering glow, and your imagination fills in gaps with every imaginable danger. A low, distant howl breaks the silence. It is not close, but it is near enough to make your pulse quicken. The pack is out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting for opportunity. You continue patrolling along the edge of town, making sure no animals or people have slipped unnoticed through gates or gaps in fences. Livestock are safer closer to the barns, but you know that wolves are clever and patient. Some nights, they are not a direct threat, only a reminder of how exposed the town really is. Other nights, they could mean panic, loss, and chaos if livestock are taken or someone wanders too far from safety. As you walk, you notice faint tracks in the snow leading toward the edge of the forest. They are small, likely a fox or a lone dog, but your mind cannot help racing through possibilities. A single paw print can be harmless, or it could be the first sign of a much larger threat. Step by step, you patrol the perimeter. Your lantern's light casts long shadows across the frost-covered ground. The wind whispers, carrying faint scents of pine, smoke, and the earthy odor of wild animals. Occasionally, a distant howl echoes again, reminding you that night's dangers are not confined to the town walls. You remain alert, ready to raise the alarm or intervene if necessary, even in these early morning hours when exhaustion is heavy in your limbs. Your duty does not end. The safety of the town depends on watchmen willing to face not only human mischief and crime, but the threats that roam beyond the walls. The snow crunches under your boots, the lantern sways in your grip, and every sense is tuned to the dark, cold world around you. Step by step, hour by hour, you continue your patrol, because for a medieval night watchman, danger never truly sleeps. And as dawn begins to creep closer over the distant horizon, you know that the night's final hours will demand every ounce of vigilance, courage, and endurance you possess. The wolves may wait, the shadows may move, the town's safety remains in your hands, and you will not rest until the sun rises fully, casting light over the streets you have protected throughout the long, merciless night. The night has begun its slow decline toward dawn, yet the hours remain perilous. Lantern swinging steadily, you move through the winding streets, alert to every noise and shadow. Though the cold bites at your fingers and the snow crunches beneath your boots, you cannot slow your pace. The town still needs you. Most nights are quiet, some filled with minor disturbances, but occasionally you encounter real threats. Thieves. Thieves in medieval towns were rarely professional criminals in the modern sense. Most were opportunists, desperate villagers, or wandering rogues seeking food or small valuables. But desperation makes them bold, especially in the hours when watchmen are tired and streets are empty. You pause at a corner near the marketplace. Something feels off. A crate has been nudged slightly from its usual position, and a faint scuff mark leads toward a shadowy alley. You lift your lantern higher, scanning the darkness. For a moment, nothing moves. Then, at the edge of your light, a figure crouches low, trying to move silently. The thief freezes when your lantern illuminates him. He is young, perhaps no older than 15 or 16. His eyes widen with fear as he realizes he has been caught. "Stop right there," you command, voice firm but steady. He hesitates, weighing his chances. Running could be dangerous in the snow and darkness, but staying may lead to punishment. Finally, he bolts, darting into the alley. You chase him, lantern held high, following the faint sound of scuffling boots. The chase is short. He slips through a narrow gap between two buildings, disappearing into shadows you cannot follow. This is the reality of a medieval watchman. Some threats you prevent, some you cannot catch. Often, your presence alone is enough to make thieves think twice and retreat before stealing anything significant. You return to the main street, scanning carefully for other disturbances. Occasionally, you find small signs of attempted theft, an unlocked door, a disturbed bundle of goods, or footprints in the snow. Each time you note it, report it if possible, and continue your patrol. The adrenaline from the chase fades, leaving you aware of the long hours still ahead. Fatigue presses against your limbs, but the streets remain unpatrolled if you stop. Step by step, you move on. Lanterns swinging, eyes scanning every shadow, ears tuned to every faint sound. Every alley, every corner, every quiet street could conceal danger. The town depends on you to notice first, to intervene before small mischief becomes major loss. A faint rustle behind a closed stall draws your attention. You stop, raise the lantern, and move slowly closer. A cat darts from under a crate, startled by the light. You exhale slowly. Not every shadow hides danger, but the possibility is always there. This is the essence of the job. Constant vigilance, endless attention, and the awareness that the quietest moments can suddenly erupt into chaos. You continue your patrol toward the town gates. The first hints of dawn are beginning to appear in the sky, faint streaks of pink and orange across the horizon. But until the sun rises fully, your watch is not over. Step by step, hour by hour, You move through the streets, keeping your lantern high, your senses alert. Because in a medieval town, threats never rest. Thieves slip through shadows, animals wander, accidents happen, and the cold keeps everyone awake and irritable. And until the town is bathed in sunlight, the night's dangers remain in your hands. You call out softly, your voice echoing through the empty streets. All is well, the night is calm. For now it is true. But you know that even as the light grows, vigilance must continue. Because the night is not truly over until the town is fully awake. And until then, you remain its silent guardian. The hours creep forward, and the darkness begins to lose some of its oppressive weight as the faint glow of pre-dawn touches the horizon. Yet the night is far from over. Every shadow, every sound, every flicker of light is still a potential danger. As you patrol near the bakery district, a strange scent reaches your nose. It's subtle at first, almost drowned out by the cold night air. But then it becomes unmistakable. Smoke. Smoke is one of the Watchman's worst enemies. In a town built mostly of timber and thatch, a single ember can grow into a roaring blaze before anyone notices. Houses, livestock, goods, lives, they can all be destroyed in moments if fire spreads unchecked. You quicken your pace, lantern held high, eyes scanning rooftops and chimneys. Every stack of straw, every flickering hearth could be the source. The faint smell grows stronger, more urgent. Near a small row of houses, you notice a thin wisp of dark smoke rising from a chimney. At first, it seems normal, perhaps someone stoking their fire. But the thickness is unusual, and the smell carries a sharp, acrid edge. Your heart beats faster. You knock on the nearest door, waking the occupant. A groggy man opens, rubbing his eyes. You point to the smoke. "It's fine," he mutters sleepily. "Just the fire in the hearth." You nod, but something doesn't feel right. Experienced watchmen learn to trust instincts over explanations. The smell, the way the smoke curls, the slight heat in the wind, it all indicates that something is not quite right. You continue along the street, moving cautiously, scanning for any flare or flicker. A small shadow moves near the corner of your lantern's light, a cat, most likely. But every nerve is alert. Fires in the night spread quickly. Roofs, timber walls, and straw bundles are dangerously flammable. The risk is amplified during winter, when people burn larger fires to stay warm. One careless ember can ignite a chain reaction. You check the surrounding chimneys, tapping a few lightly to ensure they are secure. Smoke is present, yes, but it is contained. For now. Still, you make a mental note to check again later. Fire waits for no one. Even a brief lapse in attention can mean catastrophe. Step by step, you move toward the town center, keeping your senses tuned to the faintest hints of danger. You glance at windows and roofs, sniffing for any unusual smell, listening for faint crackles. The night is almost over, Dawn is approaching, but the danger remains real. The town may seem peaceful, but vigilance cannot waver. You call softly into the streets. All is well, the night is calm, and for now it is true, but a watchman knows the truth. Peace is fragile, and even the faintest smell of smoke demands attention, patience, and immediate action. The night will end eventually, but the threat of fire is eternal in a medieval town, and until the sun rises fully, you continue your patrol, watchful, alert, and ready for the moment when the night decides to stir once more. The night stretches on, and your body protests every step. Your boots are wet and cold from walking through snow and icy puddles. Your fingers stiff in your gloves, and your legs ache from hours of patrolling the empty streets. Fatigue is one of the watchman's worst enemies. Unlike the obvious dangers of fire, thieves, or wild animals, exhaustion attacks silently, eroding judgment and dulling senses. A moment of inattention can have disastrous consequences. As you walk, every small sound seems amplified. A distant caw of a crow sounds like a scream. A loose shutter rattling in the wind sounds like a door opening somewhere it shouldn't. Even the faint crunch of your own footsteps against the cobblestones feels like it belongs to someone else. The mind plays tricks in these long hours. You see shadows twist and move in impossible ways. Familiar streets seem unfamiliar, corners appear deeper, and alleys longer. The dark exaggerates everything. Your lantern flickers, and for a split second, the glow seems to disappear entirely. You startle at the sudden darkness, even though you know it is only a momentary gust of wind. You pause in the marketplace, scanning the empty stalls. Shapes of crates and barrels stretch across the snow in strange forms, creating illusions of figures crouched, waiting to pounce. Your pulse quickens despite knowing nothing is there. Even the wind becomes an enemy. Every gust carries sounds from distant streets, twigs snapping, snow sliding from rooftops, doors creaking. Your ears strain to interpret each noise correctly, but fatigue blurs judgment. You remind yourself, stay alert, keep moving. One mistake could cost lives or property. Patrolling in the cold with heavy layers of clothing adds to the physical exhaustion. Each step is heavier. Fingers are numb despite gloves. Every joint aches, yet stopping is not an option. The town sleeps, relying on you to remain awake, aware, and capable. The hours drag on. Your lantern swings, shadows flicker, and your mind continues to fill empty streets with imagined threats. You pass a small alley and think you hear someone whisper your name. You freeze, heart pounding, you listen. Silence, only the wind, but your nerves are frayed. Your mind is overactive from hours of darkness, cold, and isolation. The long night makes ordinary noises seem menacing. Ordinary shadows seem alive. And yet, despite all this, the watchman persists. Step by step, street by street, you continue the patrol. You remain vigilant, knowing that even in the early morning hours, the town is not completely safe. The first faint colors of dawn touch the horizon, pale streaks of pink and orange promising relief. The cold will remain, but daylight brings warmth, visibility, and a sense of safety. Still, until the sun rises fully, every step must be taken, every corner checked, every sound noted. Because in these long hours before dawn, when fatigue makes the mind a dangerous companion, the watchman's alertness is the town's only safeguard. The night is almost over, but your vigilance cannot falter, not yet. The night drags into its final hours. Your lantern swings low, the flame trembling against the icy wind. Cobblestones glint faintly under the weak pre-dawn light, and the snow crunches steadily beneath your boots. These hours are both the quietest and the most deceptive. The town seems peaceful, almost asleep beyond sleep, but a watchman knows better. Silence can be a trap. It is during these moments that mischief, accidents, or danger often arises. You pass through the central square, empty except for the wooden stalls and a few stray bits of debris. Moonlight, fading now as dawn approaches, casts long shadows across the snow-covered stones. Each shadow seems to stretch and move, conjured by your tired mind. Even in these calm moments, your senses remain alert. You listen for faint creaks indoors, the soft shuffle of boots, the scuff of something dragging across the street. A distant bell tolls somewhere in the town, though no church service has begun. Perhaps it is the clock marking the hour, or perhaps, in the eerie silence, it is something else. Your heart beats faster. Nights like this teach you to never dismiss anything entirely. You round a corner near the town's granary. A cart leans slightly, its wheel settling after hours of cold contraction. You pause to inspect it, shining your lantern across the wooden frame. Nothing seems disturbed. A small relief, but one you cannot take lightly. Winter has made the night harsher. Snow covers footprints, hiding signs of passage. Ice slicks across streets, making careful steps essential. Even a minor slip can lead to injury, and in these hours, no one is around to help. The faint hint of chimney smoke drifts through the air. You lift your head, smelling the warmth of fires being stoked in anticipation of the morning. The town awakens slowly, though the streets remain empty for now. You call out softly, a ritual repeated hundreds of times across nights like this. All is well, the night is calm. Your voice echoes through the silent streets, a reminder that someone is awake, someone is vigilant. Even if the rest of the town does not notice, your presence matters. Step by step, you continue past narrow alleys and frozen wells, past quiet homes with shutters tightly closed. Every shadow, every sound, every small movement is significant. Your body aches, and your mind is tired, but you remain alert. These final hours before sunrise are the hardest. Fatigue blends with relief, and every noise seems amplified. Every creak and whisper could be a threat or a test of your focus, yet the reward is near. Soon, the first full light of day will arrive, casting its warmth and clarity across the town. The night's dangers will fade, and your long, cold vigil will finally conclude until the next night calls you back into darkness. Step by step, you move onward, lantern in hand, eyes scanning, mind alert. Because even as dawn approaches, the silent streets demand respect, caution, and the watchman's unwavering attention. The night is almost over, but the town's safety still depends on you. And until sunlight breaks completely across the rooftops, your watch continues. The horizon is faintly lit now, streaks of pale gold and pink spreading slowly across the sky. The sun is not yet risen, but the promise of morning begins to chase away the deepest shadows. Still, the streets are quiet, and your work is far from done. This is the final stretch of the night, the hours when your body aches most and your mind struggles against exhaustion. Every step is heavy, every breath a visible puff in the cold air. Fingers are stiff, back and legs sore from long hours of patrol. Yet your vigilance cannot waver. The town is nearly asleep no longer. Some early risers begin to stir, lighting hearths, preparing the first fires of the day. But the streets themselves remain mostly empty. This is when thieves and wanderers sometimes make their last attempt before sunrise. Hopping the night watchman is too tired or distracted to notice. You pass the central gate again, checking locks, hinges, and the surrounding streets. The wood is cold and rigid beneath your hands, the iron straps worn but strong. The gates will soon be opened for the morning bustle, but until then, they are a silent barrier against the darkness outside. A stray cat darts across your path, startling you for a brief moment. Your lantern illuminates its fur for an instant before it disappears into the shadows. Moments like these test patience, reminding you how easily exhaustion can make the mind play tricks. Every alley, every corner, every shadow is scanned carefully. You check the market square once more, making sure no barrels have shifted, no doors left ajar, no faint footsteps have gone unnoticed. A distant rooster crows, though the hour is still early. Its call is a reminder that relief is near, that your vigil is almost complete. Step by step, you move along familiar streets, lanterns swinging steadily, eyes alert for anything unusual. Even in these final moments of darkness, the town relies on you. Every person sleeping safely owes their security to your tireless watch. The wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of fires being lit in kitchens and bakeries. Smoke curls lazily into the sky, a reminder that life is returning to the streets. You pause briefly on a bridge overlooking the frozen river. Ice covers much of the surface, reflecting the first hints of morning light. The night's long hours are nearly behind you, you call out once more, a ritual that marks the conclusion of your patrol. All is well, the night is calm. The echo fades, absorbed by the awakening town. Soon merchants will arrive, children will stir, livestock will be tended, and the streets will be alive once again. Your watch, for now, is over. But even as you feel the relief of completion, you know the truth. The night will return. The cold, the shadows, the strange noises, the drunks, the thieves, the wandering wolves, they will all return. And you, the medieval night watchman, will be called again to walk the streets, lantern in hand, eyes sharp, mind alert, guarding the town while the rest sleep peacefully. The sun begins to rise fully, washing the town in golden light. Your night has ended, but tomorrow, and the next night, and the next, your vigil will begin again. Because in a medieval town, someone always must watch, and that someone is you. The first rays of the sun finally stretch across the town, painting the rooftops in warm gold and soft orange. The long, cold night is over. Your lantern's flame flickers for the last time, now almost redundant against the growing light. For the townspeople, it is a new day. Merchants begin to open their stalls. Children's laughter echoes faintly in the streets, and smoke rises from chimneys as breakfast fires are lit. Life continues as if the night had passed without incident. But you know better. You know the hours of darkness were filled with constant vigilance, silent observation, and the small crises that could have become disasters. The drunken brawls, the wandering thieves, the faint smells of smoke, the distant howls of wolves, they were all part of your night, and you endured them alone. Exhaustion presses against you, but there is also a quiet satisfaction. You kept the town safe. You were the unseen guardian, the invisible protector who ensured everyone could sleep without fear. As you make your final rounds, checking the main gate one last time, you glance back down the streets you have patrolled for hours. Snow crunches faintly under your boots, and the early light casts long shadows behind every building. Step by step, you acknowledge the invisible toll of the night, the fatigue, the tension, the loneliness, the endless march through dark streets and alleys. You know it will all return tomorrow night, but for now, it is over. You take a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The sun warms your face, and the shadows of the night retreat. For a brief moment, you allow yourself to relax, knowing that the town is safe, the streets are calm, and the people can live another day unaware of the danger that passed unnoticed. You call out one final time, a ritual that has defined countless nights. All is well, the night is calm. The echo fades into the waking town, answered only by the distant chatter of townspeople starting their day. And in this moment, the truth of your job is clear. It was long, cold, exhausting, often thankless, but utterly necessary, because the night never stops, and someone must always watch. And for this town, for this long, dark, medieval night, that someone was you. The life of a medieval night watchman was not heroic in the conventional sense. There were no songs sung of your deeds, no stories told around fires. Yet, without your tireless vigilance, without enduring the cold, the fatigue, the drunks, the thieves, and the wolves, the town would not survive the darkness. So next time you stroll through quiet streets at night, spare a thought for those who walk in the shadows, unseen and uncelebrated, because they keep the world safe while everyone else sleeps.